welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the Tanyuan Academy series, and this is English Nerd. So today in All About a Tale of Two Cities, I'm going to be talking about chapter 13. Just that chapter, it's called 52. 52 refers to not only the number of prisoners who are going to be executed that day, which is the most obvious interpretation of the number, but also weeks in the year, which Dickens brings up immediately. And as a student pointed out several years ago, but it's like my favorite interpretation, it's the number of cards in a deck as well. So if you think about that card metaphor back when Carton first showed up in Paris, those chapters, a hand at cards and the game made, this is truly the conclusion, the end of that card game, if you will. So yeah, we're talking about chapter 52, which is, well, you know, it's an emotional chapter, so hopefully we'll get through it just fine. I've read this book a million times, and I've taught it just as many, but it's a heart-wrenching ending. So good, though. All right, so Darnay has been sentenced to death within 24 hours. Several of those hours have elapsed. There really are only a few left, and Darnay, to his credit, has a very different response than the first time he was thrown into La Force, for instance. At that time, he basically started acting immediately as Dr. Manette would, just pacing his cell, counting the number of steps, freaking out. And here he's much more at peace with the whole thing. He thinks about his family and how they would want him to be at peace. And so he writes 3 letters in his final hours. The longest one is to Lucy, explaining his decision to keep his name from her, how that was a condition of the marriage, that he would tell Dr. Manette but not Lucy, and of course talking about little Lucy and all of that. His second letter is to Dr. Manette, and he could see at the trial that Dr. Manette was falling into this horrible relapse, just horrendous. So he writes to Dr. Manette imploring him to take care of Lucy and little Lucy. It says in the strongest terms, yes, that he confided Lucy and little Lucy to his care, hoping that would kind of snap him out of the horrible funk that he'd fallen into. And his last letter goes to Mr. Lorry, and that's basically his will, since Lorry has dealt with all their worldly affairs, as they call them. Dickens points out very clearly that he never thought of Carton. His mind was so full of the others that he never once thought of him. When I first read this book, I thought, how dare he? Because I knew that Carton was going to sacrifice himself at this point. The clues are all lining up. There's really no other explanation for what Carton's been doing. So I thought, my gosh, why would Darnay not think of him? But it makes sense for Darnay not to think of Carton. What reason would he have to think that Carton, of all people, would sacrifice himself for Darnay? He's never really liked Darnay. Darnay's never really liked him. And Darnay never understood the depth of love that Carton had for Lucy. Lucy never told him about that conversation that they had and the promises that Carton made there. So it makes sense, although it just kind of twists the knife a little bit. The tension is really excellent in this scene. Dickens just ticks away the hours. 12 gone forever, 1 gone forever. I mean, it just makes your heart go. And then finally, we get to the real purpose of this chapter, and it goes this way. Footsteps in the stone passage outside the door. He stopped. The key was put in the lock and turned. Before the door was opened, or as it opened, a man said in a low voice in English, "He has never seen me here. I have kept out of his way. Get you in alone. I wait near. Lose no time." The door was quickly opened and closed, and there stood before him face to face, quiet, intent upon him, with the light of a smile on his features and a cautionary finger on his lip, Sidney Carton. Okay, so a few things about this besides the general awesomeness. Footsteps in the stone passage outside the door. This is one of the last references to footsteps. We get that motif through a large portion of the book, starting with hundreds of people probably. And here the footsteps are not the footsteps of a mob, but they're these footsteps coming into their lives that are positive. It's Carton's footsteps coming. The speaker, he's never seen me here, get you in alone. That's Barsad. This is the one thing that Carton blackmailed Barsad into doing, just opening the door and letting him in. And the most important part of this is Carton himself, of course, as he comes in. His expression is completely different than it was before. His whole aspect has changed. He has this hopeful, joyful kind of expression on his face that he didn't have when he was working as a lawyer, when he was at the Old Bailey trial or hanging out with Stryver or even talking to Lucy or going over to the Darnay's house. We never really saw this side of Carton until now, at the least likely moment when somebody would be joyful. So the reason that he's changed, I think, is that he's found purpose. He's able to put his love into action, to actually save Lucy and her entire family. His life is meaningful in a way that it wasn't before because of what he's giving to them, which is just very nice indeed. So Darnay is shocked and confused. He's like, were you arrested? I mean, are you going to be killed? What is even happening? And Carton just says, Lucy sent me and we need to switch clothes. And so Darnay is super confused and he's like, I don't think we can escape or anything. And Carton just goes, shut up, let's switch clothes. I didn't ask you to escape or anything. So she's asking you to do this, so just do this. So that's how they switch now. Now Carton's the one who looks all put together with his hair back, and Darnay is all shabby like Carton is. And then Carton says, all right, and then Lucy wants you to write down this letter that I'll dictate to you. Darnay's so confused by this point, he just goes along with whatever. And so he's there, he's writing down what Carton's saying, and this is what the letter says. It's not officially addressed to anybody, but it's very clear who it's for, based on what Carton dictates. If you remember the words that passed between us long ago, you will readily comprehend this when you see it. You do remember them, I know. It is not in your nature to forget them. I am thankful that the time has come when I can prove them. That I do so is no subject for regret or grief. I mean, he's writing to Lucy. There's no doubt about it. He's referring back to that conversation that they had at the end of the Fellow of No Delicacy, or really throughout the whole chapter. The promise that he made that he would give his life to keep a life she loves beside her. So he's making it clear what he's done, why he's done it, and that nobody needs to feel sad or guilty about any of that. All of this is just so beautiful. And there's actually a little bit of humor kind of interspersed, at least I think it's sort of funny. So as Darnay is writing this letter, Carton is reaching in his jacket and getting something. And so Darnay looks up, he's distracted and goes, is that a weapon in your hand? No, I'm not armed. What is in your hand? Darnay's trying to figure out what in the world is Carton really doing here? And so he's like, are you going to kill me before they kill me? What even is happening? And when Carton takes it out, it's the chloroform or whatever, those things that he got from the chemist and mixed together, and puts it over Darnay's face to knock him out. Darnay actually fights him. They fight for a while because Darnay is confused and doesn't realize what's going on and thinks that Carton is attacking him. And that's like their last interaction. I kind of like that. I don't know. I don't know if it would have made a difference if Darnay had just gone, oh yeah, this sounds like a good plan. But I like that Darnay has no idea from start to finish what's really going on. And that Carton he just doesn't mind a bit. He carries on with his plan because he was never doing it for Darnay anyway. He was doing it for Lucy, who will get Darnay back, one way or another, whether Darnay wants to be taken out or not. So they take out Darnay. The excuse that they give is that Carton, Darnay of course, but Carton was overcome with emotion in the last time that he got to talk to his friend, and so he fainted. Carton, it says the real Carton, when he was going into the prison, acted like he was feeling all faint already, so that it would make it more believable when the fake Carton was taken out and he was unconscious. So a little bit more spy-ish Carton at work, which I love. So Carton now is prepared to die in place of Darnay, and he's taken into the room with the other people. All the 52 are there who are going to be executed. And this girl walks up to him and says, "Oh, don't you remember me? I was with you in La Force, that other prison." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely Darnay, that's for sure." And they have this conversation. It's this young seamstress who had befriended Darnay, and Carton can't keep up the facade for that long because he doesn't know that many details. And the seamstress figures it out. There's this moment where she looks at him and goes, "Wait a second, you're not Darnay. You're just somebody who looks like him. So are you dying for him?" she asks. "And his wife and child." "Hush, yes." "Really just his wife and child." "Oh, will you let me hold your brave hand, stranger?" "Hush, yes, my poor sister, to the last." I like that there's this turnaround with Carton in like every conceivable way. He couldn't even be a pillar of strength for himself at the beginning of the story. I mean, he was crying himself to sleep after, as the sun rose after a drinking binge because he felt like he was worthless. And here he's strong enough not only to feel a sense of pride and even happiness at his decisions, but he's also able to give strength to somebody else who needs it in that moment, which is just gets me. Last thing about this chapter, we get a few pages where we see that the Darnays and Dr. Manette and Mr. Lorry have successfully left France. They don't mention Mr. Cruncher or Miss Pross because they have not left France yet. They'll deal with them in the next chapter, but Lucy, little Lucy, Darnay, Dr. Manette, and Lorry have all escaped. The plan has worked. And it's an unusual way that Dickens writes this. All of a sudden, everything's in present tense. Papers are handed out and read, and in not in third person anymore either. The he, she, it. Instead, we are trying to escape. It's like we are in the carriage that's trying to escape from France as well. There's even a point where the narrator directly addresses the reader as though they're in the coach all together. Look out and see if we are pursued. It's unusual. Most of the book is not written this way, but at this crucial moment where we need to see if the plan really worked, and we see that it does, Dickens kind of puts us in that coach along with Darnay and the rest, which is just an interesting choice I wanted to point out. Okay, just one more video after this. At least I'll try. It's going to be a longer video, I know, with the knitting done and footsteps die out forever, because it wraps up everything so beautifully. So if you've liked this series, make sure to watch the final video coming out very soon. Until then, have a good life, be of good cheer, and I'll see you later. Bye.